Danielle and Paul. How are you?
Hi, how's it going?
Good. How's your new home?
It's great. We love it.
First holiday in the new house, right?
Yep, we're excited.
Yeah, that is very exciting. It's a very cute house. So I wanted to bring you on to a series that I'm doing for buyers, and particularly for first-time home buyers that are getting a little frustrated with the market because of just how crazy it's been for buyers. And you recently bought a house in Ramsey, super hot market in July, also a super hot time to buy, and one of the biggest sellers markets that we've ever seen probably in history. So give me a little short summary about that experience.
Well, it was definitely a long one. Well, at least for us, as we were moving from the Boston area to here, and so that kind of added a wrinkle. And so before we actually ended up moving to New Jersey in a month-to-month rental. But before we did that, we were in Boston, and we were seeing a few houses here and there. And we were kind of seeing how crazy the market was, and we both knew, like, yeah, we have to be living here before we're going to be able to see enough houses and be able to act quickly enough. Yeah. And then so we lived in a month-to-month rental, and then we saw a lot of different places and had to make some quick decisions.
Yeah.
But I'm sure we'll get into that. But yeah.
Well, how long were you looking for a house before you met me? Before you came to me, really? You guys came to me. Tell everybody first how we met.
Yeah, probably like we were probably looking for about 4 to 6 months or so, probably 4 months seriously. And then we had put an offer in on a home, and we just realized that we just didn't know the market well enough, and we were really looking for an agent who did. So I went on social media and the internet and looked for someone who was highly reviewed and who knew the area, and who came recommended. So
well, you were looking across 2 states, right? Weren't you?
Yes.
Rockland County and Bergen?
Yep.
Yeah,
so
that's how I remember that. That's how you came to me, because I was licensed in both, and you were kind of trying to look over the border, and that's obviously challenging.
Yes.
So I remember that house you told me about that you offered on. It's funny, you know, so how many houses did you offer on in total, even before we met? Just that one before we met, right?
Just the one before we met, and then maybe 4 total.
Yeah, 4 total. Two on the house we got, but 4 total.
Yeah. Okay. So I remember, I think you and I offered on 2. So I usually tell buyers, and it can be a little discouraging when they don't get the bid, but I usually tell buyers, like, the right home is going to be there. Like, these offers that you put in, let them go. If they're not exactly what you're willing to pay and you're not feeling it, it's okay to just walk away when the bids are flying, and, put in what you're comfortable with and walk away. Any regrets on the ones that got away?
No, I think it actually set us up for success, because there were a couple where we just didn't fully know what we wanted out of, the area or the house. And we were very disappointed that we didn't get the houses. But then when this house came along, we were like, oh, this is perfect. Like, this is the right area that we want to be in. This is the right, house. So.
And I think I told you guys that I've always had buyers, even if they've had to offer on 1 or 2 couple of houses before they hit that one, that they've never looked back and said, oh, I wish I had been in that house instead.
Yeah, that's never gonna happen. No, yeah, we don't even think about those houses anymore, really. And it's like, you can't
something on a busy road, I remember, or something that needed a substantial amount of work.
Yep. And you can't, it's like a sports term, you can't overreach, or you can't reach, like, when you're drafting, like, you don't want to reach outside of your comfort zone. And like you said, just be patient and stick within what you're comfortable with, and something will come along.
Yeah, I like that. I like that analogy. Yeah. So do you agree that you need to be aggressive and a little bit creative in this market?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So we we definitely we got creative, and you have to like the one of the biggest things, like if someone's moving from out of state, we moved in state and into a temporary month to month place, so like we could extend it as far out as we needed to if we had a closing date that was far off, like we did. We had a really long closing, or you could, we could have closed in the minimal amount of time. Either we were flexible with either one.
Yeah.
I think that helped us a lot. Like we didn't have to worry about a lease or renting or things like that to have to deal with. And we were in state, so we were able to go see showings. You have to be able to be flexible when you can go see showings. Like this house that we saw during the week, and we were the first people in it, and we're the first offer. And then you have to be willing to spend your weekends at open houses. And
Yes.
we saw a lot of places, and then that let us get comfortable with the market. And so that when we knew there was a house that we were comfortable with and really loved, we were able to comfortably go over asking price and have no question about it. We were comfortable to go waive appraisal and a certain amount, because we knew for sure it would appraise, because we've seen every house in the market in the town.
I threw a lot of like little creative things at you guys, and the fact that you were very flexible on that and you trusted me to represent those terms, I think really got this job done. Don't you agree?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And because you live in Ramsey and work in this area, and so we knew you knew the market, and that was big for us. Being first time home buyers, and also having to be creative with how we made our offer. And so that was huge to have you be able to trust what your experience and in general, but also in Ramsey, and so that helped a ton.
Yeah, it's good to have somebody with you that can evaluate the price of what the home should be, because agents don't always price them. They sometimes price them a little bit lower on purpose.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to know the fair market value of where you are. And I think what you're saying about shopping around hidden open houses, even if it's not a house that you may particularly like. I know we got out and we saw a few homes where I was like, this isn't going to be the one, I can tell.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think it's still important to see them.
Yeah, and then see them. We would see them and be inside them, and then see what they went for. And then we became pseudo experts in the market too. So we were able to be comfortable with, all the crazy steps we went through to get the house. And so, it's kind of like you have to just get out there and see places and see what they're going for and what condition they're in, and that kind of thing.
I always tell buyers, don't hesitate to bother your agent. I think a lot of people they get friendly with their agent, which is great. I think it's important to have that relationship. But then when it comes to seeing a house that may be outside of that window, that box that you kind of identify for yourself, they're afraid to call up and say, can we go out and see this house? Because they know they're not going to offer on it. But that's when I say, if you have a good agent, that's important to that agent too, because it gets them to know what you want. And it also helps to just see what's out there, like you said.
And everything happens so quickly in this market. A good house is going to be on the market less than 7 days. It's going to have some showings and an open house, and then it's gone. And so you need to be able to put in an offer, usually over asking, immediately after you see the house. And the only one, one of the best ways to be able to do that is to see a lot of houses, even if you're not sure you're going to put an offer in. So
that's a good point. I like that. Yep, you're absolutely right. And I think one of the things that we did for offers on this was we gave them flexible timing, which is important.
Yeah,
they needed it and they took it.
Yes.
But that was important to them. And I almost think that actually turned their heads a little bit toward your offer, because we were the first to offer, but then they also allowed more offers to come in over the course of 3 days, which is very common in this market. Most sellers aren't taking that first offer. It's good to be first, but it's also sometimes you have to wait it out a little bit. But they came back to us, and they came back to us for that. I think they came back to us because we did a partial appraisal waiver. You don't have to, I think the common misconception is that you have to waive your entire appraisal. Sometimes it just helps to waive it a little bit, to the point where if you go over asking price, there's a differential. And also, if I remember correctly, we did an escalation clause, which was basically putting your offer above the next offers, in increments. that I find has been a helpful way to go after a market where the house appears to be priced a little bit below market value,
Right.
right? We did a few things to get this house, but I felt it was worth it. It was a great house.
Yes.
And we waived inspection for mechanical and structural, or except
Yeah.
mechanical and structural.
Yeah,
So I
that's
think-
another thing too, is you don't always have to waive the entire inspection. And to be honest with you, I don't like having my buyers not do an inspection. I don't
Yeah.
think that should be, I'm a big supporter of inspections. And I think that these people that are going in and not doing inspections, I think that's a problem. I think it's gonna end up in a disaster for a first-time home buyer. But there's creative ways that you can do a partial waiver. You can do, an acceptance of a certain amount of repairs and things like that. So,
And we knew that if this house, like we weren't gonna blow the deal if there was like a bee's nest or if the cabinet doors didn't close or stuff like that. And like we knew the house was well taken care of, and we just, we weren't gonna be picky when it came to little stuff. But knowing the big stuff was covered, like the furnace and the hot water heater and the foundation and stuff like that, that made us feel a lot better with
Yeah.
waiving.
And I think that was just one thing that made the sellers more comfortable, knowing that they weren't going to have to go down a laundry list of small repairs before they got ready to leave.
well, it's very common for buyers to backpedal on inspection to try to gain some of that money back that they bid very high over.
Yeah,
Mhm.
not in this market. It's tough to do that in this market.
Yeah, I agree. So the process wasn't too painful, right? You
In
went out, you were looking for a little while on your own. Where were you going to open houses and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Calling agents and calling like sellers agents to try to get in, or you just strictly were doing opens?
A little bit of both at the beginning. And I think what we found was that's when we learned about dual agents. So if we like had tried to go see a house that was represented by one of the sellers, then they wanted to do kind of dual agency, and that's something that we weren't as comfortable with. But yeah.
So I'm going to interrupt you for a second because that brings me to my last question. Of course, a self-promotion question in a way. But lastly, why do you think it was necessary to have a buyer agent? A lot of people do what you were doing, go straight to the seller's agent and hope they're getting the best deal because they think that agent is going to get both sides of the commission, which is a misconception. It doesn't always happen, to be honest with you. And often there's negotiations between the sellers and their agents. If that does take place, that they can sometimes, negotiate a different fee for that. But why do you think it was important for you to have a buyer agent that represented you specifically?
Well, like aside from like all like the minutia that you don't realize that goes into buying a house, and like, putting the offer in is kind of just the beginning in a lot of ways, or getting your offer accepted. There's a ton of little stuff that, goes on between then and closing. And so having someone guide you through that and help you with all that is huge. But that, that's kind of just when it starts. But, in this market, you have to be prepared to be creative like we were. And if we didn't have you to kind of guide us through that, or, we could have gone too far with the escalation clause or waived too much of the appraisal or stuff like that, or just not had the courage, so to speak, to do any of those things. And then we wouldn't have gotten the house, or we would have overpaid for a house or things like that. And so, having an agent that knows the market that you're trying to buy in is I can't imagine buying a house in this market without that. Even a regular market. I can't imagine. Because there's just so much, there's so much nuance that goes into all of it that you don't get just on your own.
Yeah. And then you need to be able to have someone who can kind of help get you into showings and see things when they go on the market immediately. So like for our house, we saw it went live through the portal that you kind of sent us through, and we saw it that night, and then we messaged you and we're like, can we get into this, immediately? And you were able to kind of to help get that ball rolling, and we were the first people in the home. Whereas, by the time you might see a house that a seller's agent is putting up, they might already have multiple offers, and they're not going to represent your interests as well.
Yeah, it's true. Sometimes the seller agents, you know, we've definitely done business as sellers agents with buyers as well coming to our listings. But I have to be honest with you, when I first put a property on the market in a market like this, my first day is spent fielding phone calls. So I may not have time to get another buyer into that property. And I have heard stories about where buyers have come to me and said, you know, we tried to call the seller's agent, but they weren't picking up the phone. And it's usually you're pretty swamped that first day, a couple of properties go on for you. So for me, I always try to be available because you have to. You're right. You have to get in there. And even if they plan to do an open house and they want to field offers over the course of 3-4 days, like in your case, sometimes being that first one in and making that kind of an impression, it helps. It really does. So, well, I won't keep you much longer because I know that you're busy. You're working from home. You got stuff going on. I know you've been doing some work on the house, so we're going to take this offline and I'm going to go. I want to see what you guys have done to the house. But I thank you for your time for this. So this is probably very, very helpful for buyers. And I hope that you guys spend a lot of years happy in the home. Of course, I'm going to throw you under the bus with baby on the way.
Yeah.
You get to start your new family in your new house in a great little town. Great. Town. Ramsey is such an awesome place. So enjoy it. And, you know, we'll be in touch. I'm sure I'll see you around town.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.